welcome to Premier 31. Well, today we're going to do a little variation. We're going to focus back on some of the personal healthcare, do-it-yourself healthcare items. So we're going to just take a break from the internal map of reality and meditation content for tonight and focus in on the things that we can do in our life day to day to look after ourselves. So the topic tonight is actually a bonus topic: do-it-yourself health products that you can use in your home on a day-to-day basis. What things can you do to just help things along? So we're going to go through my PowerPoint here, and we'll cover these main topics. We'll look at what I mean by health products versus the standard commercial or prescription type products. And we'll take a look at the scope of what this presentation is about, and that it is not a medical advice. It's more looking at what has historically been used for people by themselves over the many years. And then we'll start going through some of the cheap, safe, and effective. And this is what I really want you to understand, that all of these are very, very inexpensive, proven to be extremely safe. And I'll also go through why there is a scientific reason why these are safe. And then look at some of the effectiveness. Now, in terms of the effectiveness, you will need to do some of your own investigation. Just go on the internet and search. If I was to go into the details of how all of these products can be used on a personal level, this would become a very long presentation. So the scope here is not to necessarily go into all of the benefits, but just to sort of open the door, and then you can pursue. We'll wrap it up. I'll take a look at some of the things that you can do that are at another level but have a cost. The costs are in these particular two items I'm presenting today. Not severe, but the benefits are really dramatic. So if you have some extra cash and can afford a couple of these items, then the benefits will be very, very self-evident. And finally, I'll wrap it up with the number one top healing technique that we have built into our system that we can activate at any time. And there's some issues with this technique, so we want to just sort of put everything out there for you to look at. Okay, so let's go into it. My approach is always to look at the holistic approach, that we have a mind and a body and a soul, and that the practice of meditation will have many benefits for your mind. And the practice of things like Tai Chi and yoga and even just daily walking has a benefit for the body. And now there's other videos I've done where I talk more specifically about the mind and body component. But today we're going to zero in on the soul. And to me, the soul, what I consider the soul, is to be whatever you think you are, doing whatever you think you are doing, wherever you believe that you are located. It's whatever you think you are, doing whatever you think you are doing, wherever you think you happen to be. That boils down to that mindfulness. What are you perceiving about yourself? What do you perceive that you're doing? That being said, what that means is that you have the ability then to pick and choose the things that you include in your daily activities. So when we're talking about health products, I'm talking about things that occur naturally in nature. So as you can see here, I'm comparing a lemon to a pharmaceutical or prescribed drug. Now, there's some big differences between these two approaches. One is that, in this case, a lemon. It's natural. It's very, very simple. It's not complicated ingredients. And the lemon can have multi functions. It can use as a food. It can use as a cleanser. It can use as a healing device. Lemons are very much multi-purpose. Whereas prescriptions tend to be sole purpose. You take them for a specific reason. Sometimes prescriptions can be used, have multiple alternate uses, but in most cases, what we're looking at here is very, very man-made chemicals that are not found in nature, or if they are found in nature, they're not at the concentration levels. So we'll be focusing on the things that occur in nature. But I'm going to go even simpler than a lemon. I'm going to be talking about products that we can use on a personal basis without even talking about food. But before I go any further, I just want to put out here again that I am not a doctor. I'm not trying to give medical advice. But what I am trying to highlight are the things that I do in my day, in my world, in my life, that I find beneficial. Now, when you look at these components I'm going to talk about, there's a lot of research out there, a lot of evidence that these do work. And there's a historical record going back hundreds, if not thousands of years of these products being used for health. The main thing I want to point out here is that everything is compatible with whatever you may be doing with your holistic practitioner that you're working with. So if you're working with a health practitioner, all of these, I'm 100% certain, will be compatible. There might be the odd case where your health practitioner might say, oh, well, don't eat lemons because of whatever your condition is. But in most cases, this is compatible with and will assist whatever therapies you may or may not be doing. Okay, so what is going on here? So the things that you can do for yourself include things with herbs, more on the aromatic type approach, or you can do your own meditations, and you can do yourself acupuncture, if you know how to use the needles, but just the pressure works. You can do yoga and Tai Chi and Reiki and all these things that you can do that are safe and effective. But I'm not even talking about that. I'm going even a level prior to doing any of these techniques. This is not a technique. This is just things that you can do for yourself. But to understand that, we should take a look at how our body is constructed. So if we look at what we are made out of, we are, 60 to 70% oxygen, right? And then a big part of our body, 18 to 19%, is carbon. And then a big hunk, it looks like it's around 10%, of hydrogen. So if you take the hydrogen and oxygen together, you get H2O, right? And the H2O is water. So that equals out to about 60 to 70% water in our body. But the point I'm trying to get at, if you break it down to the actual elements, you see that it goes oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Those are the four primary elements in the body, and the top three that you are made out of is oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen. So these elements are the elements your body knows how to work with. You're made out of it. So anything that you ingest, if it's not one of those top 3 or 4 elements, your body's going to have to figure it out. Now, when you go beyond the top 4 of oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen, you get into something called trace elements. And there are some very, very specific trace elements that your body uses, not for substantive nutrients, but more for regulating your cells. So they're used at the cellular level, and sometimes these are called cell salts. I'm going to be talking about that in a second. So the point here, too, I want to draw into is that your body will distill and cleanse everything other than those four primary elements. It will distill those out and then selectively pick certain molecules, compounds that your body needs at the cellular level. These are called cell salts. And we'll be looking at some of these. Here are the homeopathic identified cell salts, and these are part of those trace minerals. Now, the thing I want to point out here, these are not food. Your cells don't use these for food. They use it for regulation, for balance, and for the communication between the cells. Okay? And you can look into these 12 cell salts for your own self and find that very, very, very small quantities, have a very major impact at the cellular level and can be used for health. Okay, just wanted to put that out there. So we're going to go now and get right into it. So let's look at the first component or home product I think we need to focus in on. And the first one is salt, sodium. Now, sodium is not one of the top four. It's one of those trace minerals, but it's very important. If you look at the percentage of salt, sodium chloride in our bodies, it's pretty much the same as the amount of sodium chloride in the ocean. So it's a natural, what we would call density, right? So you need a certain amount of salt in your system. If your salt goes too high or if your salt goes too low, right, it starts to affect things like your pH electrical balance, and you might notice that if you are in the heat and you get too much fluid loss, that your pH will go off and you'll start getting dizzy, lightheaded, and tired. The worst case from heat exhaustion is you could go into a shock, right? So you can have heat shock, which can be lethal. So the solution for the heat stroke is salt. And what the salt does, it helps to regulate your electrical system and you get balanced again. So a little bit of salt. We used to take salt pills. I can remember when I was, at these various summer camps, and we would be working hard doing our various drills. And they would hand out salt pills to help regulate this. So what can you use salt for in the home? It can be used internally as well as externally. And if you want to, perhaps you've used salt in preserving, and perhaps you've used salt as a medication for a cut or a wound or a sore. If you had sore gums or a sore throat, you can rinse a solution of salt water, and to help cleanse it. I want to mention here that salt, sodium chloride, has to a large extent got a bad rap, and we've been told to eliminate. I'm not too sure if this is still the main thrust. It's definitely been challenged. I just want you to notice that the presence of salt in the human diet is directly related to longevity. And this is kind of anecdotal, okay? So I don't have the actual scientific research here to support it. But if you look at countries that consume high levels, significantly high levels than a North American diet, countries that consume high levels of salt also have the longest longevity. They live the longest. The case in point is Japan. They have the longest lifespan, and they consume by far the most salt. So salt, when you just look at the health records of countries, is not associated with short lifespan. It's actually associated with longer lifespans. But there's some other things with salt, as you may or may not know, that at one point salt was the main commodity. It was traded, and your wealth was measured in the amount of salt that you have. I remember one trip I had to northern China, and I was invited into a Tibetan family home, and there were a few people who spoke English, and it was really great. And what they offered me with great pleasure and joy was a tea. And I'm thinking, oh, this is really fantastic. They made a big deal of it, and they handed me this tea, and I began to drink the tea. And to my horror, that tea was primarily salt. It was yak milk and salt. So it had fat, high fat content with salt. And this is what I later learned was the main drink they would use to get through the rough winters in the mountains. The fat of the yak milk and the salt is what kept them and as a main substance to balance the bodies. So they got the liquid and the fats and the salt. Okay, so another comment I want to make about salt, sodium chloride, is that I would recommend that you purchase it in a health food store. The salt that you would get, generally speaking, in a standard grocery store has been modified and it's iodine. So they put some iodine in it, and they also ionize it. And the problem I have with any product that you digest that is ionized, i.e. an electron stripped off of the molecule, is that your body will repel it. So your body doesn't have the ability to process ionized products. And there's another word for when you are drinking or digesting foods that are heavily ionized, i.e. they're electron stripped. It causes disruption within the body. Okay? So what you want is a natural sea salt. The best salt I've heard of is salt that is mined from deep inside the earth that hasn't been exposed to the pollution of the atmosphere of the oceans. And this salt is just pure salt. There's nothing added to it. Okay? And I would definitely recommend you do that and not recommend that you take the, quote, table salt that ionized. Okay, so let's move on. What's another product that we can look at? Common baking soda. Now, baking soda can be used internally and externally, and it can be used as a cleanser. It can be used as antibacterial. And one nice thing about baking soda, it can be used as a deodorizer. Common baking soda is sodium bicarbonate, the element of sodium with carbon. Again, two elements that your body knows how to process, sodium and carbon. And of course, the main one in your body, the sodium chloride we just talked about. Now, there are many, many uses for baking soda. I personally use it to brush my teeth, and then you can use it as a deodorizer. If you have, say your sneakers have that odor from having been too sweaty, you can just sprinkle some baking soda in there, and the baking soda will completely absorb the odors. There's a thing that people have done. I don't personally do it, but you might do it. If you put a box of baking soda in your fridge, what the baking soda will do is it will absorb all the odors of your fridge to keep your fridge smelling clean. You can bathe with baking soda. If you put some baking soda in water, you'll find that the water becomes pH balanced, becomes very, very soft. You can put say half a cup of baking soda in your bath water, and it just makes the bath water very, very cleansing, very smooth, very soft. It's actually a nice way to relax. So baking soda, again, internally, externally, perfectly safe. When you take it internally, as with all the trace minerals, you need very small amounts. So please take that to heart when we're talking about all of these minerals of that 3 or 4% that we are made of. You only need very, 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 very small amounts. I sometimes think that this is why these particular products are not marketed, because there's no big commercial advantage. If you only need a very, very, very small pinch of baking soda in your water to help balance your digestion if you have upset tummy, then it's not really a great product to market because you're not going to make any money on it, right? So baking soda, again, in a little bit of water, a little bit of baking soda in some water can be used to settle the tummy. Okay, so let's move on from baking soda. We'll look at a product that you may or may not be aware of, something called borax. This is sodium with borate. Now, borate, commonly known as boron, is one of these trace elements that you need in your body. And what happens with the way we manufacturally grow our vegetables, we find that the soil is depleted in a lot of these natural elements. So you may need to add to it. When taking it internally, again, I want to stress, it's a very, 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 very tiny, tiny amount, like just 1 grain in a glass of water once in a while is all you need to bump up your boron if you are low in boron. But anyway, borax can be used externally and internally. The external use, which is the primary one that I use it for, is for cleansing clothes. You can put it in your laundry. I also use it for cleaning porcelain in the bathroom. It's an excellent cleanser for that. It's also bacterial and it's a deodorizer. The thing is here, if you're looking for borax, always look at the ingredients and make sure there is nothing added. So if you are using borax in and around your home externally and maybe internally, notice that you're just using sodium borate, which your body knows how to handle. I want to make a little note here again that if you want to use borax internally, you would definitely want to do some research, look at how others have used it, look at some case studies, and always proceed very, very slowly with, tiny, 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 tiny amounts, 1 grain, and then see how you do with it. But at these very, very small trace amounts, you will notice some benefits, but you won't have any ill side effects if you take it easy. Okay, moving along. One of my favorites is hydrogen peroxide. And again, if you look at the formula for hydrogen peroxide, it's H2O2, which is 1 or 2 of our main building blocks in our body. So hydrogen peroxide is very, very compatible, both internal and external. A little warning here. If you are going to purchase hydrogen peroxide for use and for health, please purchase it at a health food store. The version of hydrogen peroxide sold in grocery stores and in drugstores has been poisoned. You will not be able to use it at all for internal. And it's very dubious whether you should use it for external. So you want the clean version, which is called food grade. And again, recommend you purchase that in a health food store, and they have that clearly marked. You can see on this slide here, it says food grade on it. Now, what you will need to do with hydrogen peroxide is to dilute it down. If it doesn't come already diluted down to 3%, you might be purchasing something that's a 30%, in which case you have to step it down, dilute it with distilled water before you can use it. It's also a antibacterial, a deodorizer, and it's a whitener and cleanser. One thing that I do with a diluted 3% solution of hydrogen peroxide is I put it in a squirtzer, and in the morning before I brush my teeth, I will just squirt some in my mouth, rinse it around, and if I have a cut or a scrape, or I have a bite, a little fly bite or a mosquito bite, I'll just squirt some of the diluted 3% hydrogen peroxide on it from my squirtzer. So it's a great external and internal cleanser, and great for cleaning your teeth. This is something I've heard, caught me by surprise, but The watered down 3% solution of hydrogen peroxide can be used to flush out your nasal cavities. If you are noticing that you feel you're coming down with some kind of invasion, or you're sneezing a lot and you have the sense that you may have some microbes growing there in your sinus cavities, which is where they occur prior to a full lung infection, that a flushing of hydrogen peroxide diluted can eliminate up to 95 to 95% to 90% and higher of any microbes. There are clinics that specialize in hydrogen peroxide cleansing. In fact, there are clinics that specialize in salt. There's clinics that specialize in sodium bicarbonate, and there are clinics that specialize in hydrogen peroxide. And they are treating very, very, very serious conditions with just H2O2. Okay? Again, do some more research on your own, but highly recommend that you have some available and start exploring the many ways that you can use this product. Here's another one that you should have in your home, is just common distilled white vinegar. Now there is the common fermented vinegar that you might notice, and it has things floating in it. You buy the organic version, and that can be used for health as well. And the distilled version. Now the distilled white vinegar, you're pretty safe in getting that from your standard grocery store, because it is distilled, so they're not likely to put anything in it. Although I do recommend you always look at the back of the label, and it should only say distilled 100% vinegar, nothing added. Okay, so what can you do with distilled vinegar? I use it as a replacement for floor detergent, so I don't use chemicals on my floor. And if I'm cleaning the mirrors and glass in my house, I use distilled white vinegar in warm water, and it can be used to wash down floors and tabletops, glass. And what happens when you use vinegar in warm water? The vinegar, because of its acid level, kills 90 to 95% of the bacteria and microbes on contact. So it's a great cleanser. And you'll notice that if you use it, say, to wash your floors, your house or your apartment will have a really nice, fresh smell. The first time I encountered this was when I had my wellness center. A lady was going to run a workshop, and she said to me that, Steve, could you use a vinegar and water to clean the floors and surfaces? And when I sort of asked her why, she said, well, her clients are sensitive to chemicals. Now, I had known this about using vinegar and water as a cleanser, but never really bothered to use it. Never had a reason to until now. So I had the lady that was helping me clean the center, so we used just vinegar and water, and it was really inexpensive. And man, did it ever do a fantastic job. And the whole center had a beautiful, nice smell. It just sort of really was fantastic. So since then I use for my floors just vinegar and water. There are some other uses for vinegar, particularly the fermented organic vinegar, that I personally had experience with dealing with acid reflux. Okay, a small amount of organic fermented vinegar can be used to balance the acids in your body. You can just look that up on your own if you look for treatments or uses for organic apple cider vinegar is the one you'd be looking for. But I want you to notice here the chemical equation for vinegar, CH3COOH. It's just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Okay? Again, if you're using it on your body or in your body, your cells know how to break this down and how to work with it. 100% compatible. And that's the sort of theme that I'm sort of beaming at you here, is that you're putting things on your body and in your body that is consistent with the makeup of your body, so your cells will not be shocked. Okay, just moving up maybe a little bit more in terms of an unusual use. I want to mention a product, iodine, and do your research on this, but you can get food grade. Again, you only buy this in a health food store. Food grade iodine. If you buy this in a drugstore, it will be poisoned. Do not buy it in a drugstore. Go to a health food store. Okay, so this is a trace element. If you put 1 drop of iodine liquid in a glass of water and drink it occasionally, what it will do is it will help protect the thyroid. And before I go to a dentist, and if I think I might have x-rays, I make sure that a few days before I'm taking a drop of this iodine liquid in water and drinking it. What happens with this is called potassium iodine. Okay, potassium iodine, another trace mineral. What it does is that the potassium iodine, this is an electrical ionic thing. It attracts the free radicals. And the free radicals, which would be generated from the radiation, get attracted to the potassium iodine, and your body can excrete it. Okay, so and the thyroid is the part of your body that will tend to trap these ions and the free radicals and get bombarded. So what the iodine does is it helps protect the thyroid. The iodine's also a cleanser, and you can use it. I haven't seen this recently, but I know that at one point people were using it for cleaning wounds because of its properties for disinfecting. Don't see it as much now, but I see the primary use I see people using iodine is for internal use, although it can be used externally. Again, do your research. So I want to mention here now that, again, the food grade version. I want to mention that this is another product that has been known to be used for many, many, many years, but you don't hear it talked about in the mainstream. Why? Because it can't be patented. And 2, because it's another one of these trace minerals, the amount that you need per day is like really small. You may only need to take a drop once a week or, once every other day. And that's tons. A little bottle like you see in the slide here would last me over a year. So you're not going to make a lot of money selling this product. Therefore, it's not heavily marketed. Although it is available, I'd ask you to do your research, but it's something that if you don't have in your cupboard, you really should consider having it. It's potassium iodine. So let's look at this product, a commonplace alcohol or ethanol. Again, the warning, if you purchase ethanol anywhere, by law, it has been denatured and poisoned, so you cannot drink it, okay? This is deliberate to make it impossible to use it internally. But as you know, we do drink ethanol. If you go to a liquor store and you buy a vodka, that's what you're buying. But you have to pay a lot more. However, if you go into your grocery store and buy ethanol, it can be used as a disinfector. You can water it down if you want, put it in a squirtzer. And the way I do it, I always have some ethanol in a little squirtzer that if I get a cut or an abrasion or a bite, if I'm not going to use H2O2, I can use the ethanol, just squirt it on, and it will cleanse. If I'm going to put a Band-Aid on something, what I will do is I will squirt some ethanol around the area, dry the area off with a clean cloth, and then put the Band-Aid on. You can use it in various concentrations, but the nice thing about ethanol, if you're using it for a hand sanitizer, or if you're using it externally around the house, the nice thing about it is it is extremely effective. But look at the formula for it. It's only carbon and hydrogen and oxygen. So you're not putting chemicals on your body that your cells will have to figure out what to do with, right? There's nothing exotic about these chemicals. And I think that's the basic theme here, is that I've just given you a series of products that can be used for cleansing, can be used for disinfecting, it can be used for treatment of sores, either internally and externally, it can be used for regulating your digestive system. And all of these products are made up of these core elements of your body. So your body will not have to figure out how to process them. This is called toxic load. When you are digesting products that have very elaborate molecular structure, your cells have to figure out how to either break them up or disarm them. Typically what happens if it's a heavy metal or if it's a nanoparticle that your body doesn't know what to do with, it will try to encapsulate it and store it in places I call cavities of convenience, around your joints or anywhere where there's some free space. What your body will do is it will stuff these complicated chemicals or toxins, heavy metals, nanoparticles. It will try to encapsulate them and disarm them. If it can't break them down, it will encapsulate them and then try to figure out how to get rid of them later. This is what a lot of people find, that they have to do periodic toxic cleansing of these chemicals that accumulate in the body that are not naturally shed. So, you think of your liver and you think of your kidneys that are distilling the fluids in your body. It is a fantastic job. The liver does a fantastic job trying to figure out and break down all these chemicals. But it will run into difficulty with these very elaborate chemicals. Say if you're using a deodorant that has space age chemicals in it, your liver may not find that chemical on its list of how do I handle this. So this is where this buildup of toxins happens. So talking about that, what do we do with toxicity in our water? Remember now, we're 70% water. We drink water every day. And this is the next level up. If you can afford it, I would recommend that you consider getting a water distiller. Distilled water can be used internally and externally. You can purchase distilled water in the grocery store, and it is what it is. It says 100% water, and so that's true. And I find that you can get 4 liters for around $1. But making it at home has a lot of benefits. You can always have distilled water available for drinking, for cooking, and for washing. Now, why would you want to use distilled water for, say, washing your hands and face? Well, water is considered a universal solvent. So if you're using pure 100% H2O, you are using water when it's at its maximum in terms of its ability to dissolve. So if you want to cleanse something and you use water and you're using distilled water, it will be at the water's maximum efficiency for removing any of the impurities you want to get rid of. The other reason you might want to use distilled water is if you are making any kind of preparations for children. And I want to mention this because of their size. Say if you have an infant, they are very, very tiny. So proportionate wise, if you're drinking regular tap water, you are getting a certain percentage of heavy metals in that water. To an infant, that same amount, percentage-wise, has a dramatic impact, right? So it's by weight. So depending on the weight of your body and you're taking in these chemicals, the impact will be noticeable. So you might notice that it's quite often recommended to use distilled water when you're making preparations for infants, but I would say for adults too. So I only use distilled water when I'm making my soups or making any kind of sauces. If I'm using any water in any of my food, it will be distilled water. I drink distilled water. Now, if you're drinking distilled water, as I mentioned before, the distilled water is at its maximum for absorbing. One of the things that will happen in your body is that you will have organic and inorganic minerals. The organic minerals, your body will grab right away and utilize. The inorganic minerals tend to sit around and become these things of the buildup that I mentioned earlier, the toxic buildup. Well, what the distilled water will do is it will work and help dissolve inorganic minerals and help flush them out, and more effectively than if it's a water that is already fairly charged, say from the municipal water system. Now you can purchase online a water tester, and I think they're around $20 or $30. And what this water tester, it will tell you how much precipitate is in your water. So you may want to check that from time to time if you're drinking municipal water, and it's an instantaneous thing, and it gives you a reading of how many parts per million are in that. So it gives you a sort of relative scale to know what's in your water. The advantage of using a distiller, in this case I've got the brand I use at my home, generally available on all of the major online places. Now, I'm not selling these. Have no interest in selling them. I'm just mentioning it in terms of something you would consider. So you can go and research it on your own. If, however, you do want to, message me separately, and I'll give you the brand name of the one I use, but I'm not going to publicly put it here. But you can find those on the open market, and you can look at the reviews. So it eliminates all chemicals. Now, here's something that I think is kind of new over the last 10, 15, 20 years. Nanoparticles. Plastics are being found in municipal water supplies, but they're nanoparticles. And there's also other components that are being put into our food supply and water supply that are at the level of nanoparticles. The problem with nanoparticles is that your cells, generally speaking, don't see them. They're so small, they tend to be able to penetrate the cells, tend to be able to penetrate the blood-brain barrier. So there's a barrier between our blood supply and our brain, and also our cerebral fluids. There's a barrier there. So particles of a certain size cannot go in there, right? And it's done through a special form of osmosis to transfer minerals and appropriate nutrients back and forth from your blood into the spinal and cerebral fluids. Nanoparticles, because of their size, can penetrate the blood-brain barrier. And that's not good. So you want to get that out of your drinking water as much as possible. And you'll never get rid of all of the nanoparticles and plastics that are in our atmosphere. But this is a good start, and relatively inexpensive. Okay, so distilled water. If you want more information on it, just dingle me safely. But it's something you can do. And one of these devices, typically they'll last 4 or 5 years. And you can get many, 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 many liters of pure water, which is what we are made up of. Okay? Very, very important. The second item that I would say that you should maybe consider, and again, it's not a big ticket item. I think these air ultraviolet light filters, I think they run around $50. They're under $100. They're maybe $60, something like that. I'm trying to remember how much I paid for my one. Now, they're not so much trying to filter out dust. Okay, so that's not what these are designed for. These are designed to destroy microbes. So the air comes in this particular model, will come in through the bottom, the little fan there, and pulls the air through it. And there's a light in there, an ultraviolet light. And what that ultraviolet light does, the UV light, that's what is commonly called UV, disinfects the air, purifies the air by eliminating microbes. Now, when you eliminate microbes, you also eliminate odors, because when you smell odors, say your sneakers that you wear during your exercise, walking, that you walk by and go, ooh, my sneakers have that smell. Or if you have a compost in your kitchen, you open it up to put your eggshells in, you smell that strong smell. What you are smelling is airborne microbes, airborne bacteria. The UV light destroys those. Okay. Now, the light itself is totally encased. If you ever get near a UV light, you do not look at it. It's the same light they use in tanning facilities, and they instruct you to wear those special glasses to protect your eyes. So you don't look at UV light, okay? But it can be used to clean the air. There are clinics, if you go to a tanning clinic and you go into a bath, what that will do is that will clear anything growing on your skin, disinfect it. So there are UV lights that you can just put your hands in and the UV light will spread it. I don't highly recommend that. I don't think you should be cleaning or deleting all of the microbes on your skin, because I think some of them are there, actually are an asset. But anyway, for the air, strongly recommend that you consider that. Okay, well, to wrap all this up, I want to talk about the number one healing technique that you are built in. You have it. And that is fasting and meditation. Now, you might notice that whenever you're feeling ill or there's something wrong, you may not even know what the problem is. It could be in any of your three bodies. It could be some kind of spiritual, mental condition that's making you feel ill. It could be a physical condition, right? So it could be in any of the three bodies: your emotional, your spiritual, your physical, okay? What do? You tend to want to go and sit quietly and be perfectly still and meditate. Well, what has been found out, and again, you can do your own research on this, that when we fast, and by fasting, I mean drinking water only and no other food, just water, after about 8 to 10 hours, your body has consumed most of the sugars in your system, and it will go into an auto repair, okay? I did a whole series of videos, did two, and I'll put them in the comments, okay? That talk about what happens when you do this. It's amazing. And there are clinics that you can go to for people who need the fast. Now, here's the problem. In order for fasting to work, you need to fast probably longer than 8 to 10 hours. Even one day, although a one-day fast can be very beneficial, if you have a major issue that needs to be repaired, it's going to take longer than a day. And it may take a week. It might take 2 weeks. It might take 3 weeks. It might take several months. You might have to repeat these extended fasts for for a year or two, and to give the body a chance to completely repair. Now, there's something magical that happens when you don't eat. When you take in no nourishment at all, your body begins to eliminate any cells that are not functioning properly. It utilizes any of that nutrients that it may have stored. It basically cleans house. Now, there's two ways that you can do this. You can do something called intermittent, and that's the one where I mentioned, where you try to get at least 10 hours a day without eating. So you might have your breakfast at 8 in the morning, whatever, and a light lunch, and then by 4 o'clock you have your supper, and then from 5 o'clock on, you eat nothing. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 7 hours there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's, close to 15 hours of fasting. That's called a day fast. That's why breakfast is called break fast, right? Because you fast all night when you sleep and you wake up. So you can do this for a prolonged period of time every day, restricting when you eat. And that's called an intermittent fast. And that has a lot of benefits. However, for some people, they need to do the extended one and only drink water for an extended period. That is very, very hard to do. I've done some extended fasts, and I must admit, it's hard to do, right? So is there an alternative? Well, there is an alternative. Besides, if your need is greater than just doing intermittent fasting, you need to do the extended, but you can't. One thing you can do, and you can do some research on this, and if you are doing this, I'll give you some links if you contact me, is you can eliminate all carbohydrates. Now, if you look into some of my other videos, I talk about what happens when you consume carbohydrates and why this is important. Okay, when you eliminate all carbohydrates, your body can consume, typically we're talking about just eating meat, your body can consume the meat, protein, and fats very, very efficiently and quickly, and then go right back into healing mode. So it's like if you eat any kind of carbs, that would be a vegetable or fruit or any kind of liquid that has sugar in it, it takes a lot of work for a cell to process carbs. It's called cellular respiration, and it's a very complicated process. So complicated that when your cell is processing a carbohydrate, it cannot do the other host cleaning activities it needs to do. It needs to focus on that 100%. So your cells, all the cells in your body, will focus on eliminating or utilizing all carbohydrates. Number one thing it does, what that means is that your cells can't do the restoration and restore process as thoroughly. So by eliminating carbs, you basically can put your body into that autophagy state where it's doing that auto repair. You can look into that. Okay, so that's pretty much my presentation material for tonight's premiere. I just wanted to share that out there and talk about the core ingredients that you can have around your house that are 100% compatible with the four main elements of your body, that being oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen. Okay, those are your four primary things. And so all of the minerals that you take in ideally should be compatible with those primary four, or with the trace minerals that we need in our bodies. The more we can eliminate, the more complicated chemicals. Now, you know, if you got to take a drug, you got to take a drug. Okay, no problem. But understand that you should be doing things to help eliminate the byproducts from that. Okay, if you have other topics you want me to cover, I definitely will. Just send me an email or put a comment. Hope you enjoy this. And stay tuned, and we'll come back to looking at our internal map reality in our next session.